Hey everyone, what's radical forgiveness? When we don't forgive someone, how does that affect us emotionally, mentally, spiritually? If we don't forgive someone from the past, how is it affecting us in the present? We're going to talk about all that good stuff tonight on the first day of spring. Happy spring. This is a great topic, I think, to start on as we start this new season of renewal. And forgiveness is something I know that I've personally struggled with, so I'm excited to hear what our expert has to say tonight. All right, and to get tonight's Get Off the Couch segment, in honor of spring, this is an easy one this week. I want you to go out and enjoy nature, whether it's going to your local farmer's market, bringing in a fern to add some green to your indoors, or go hugging a tree, something simple. Whatever it is, just get out there and enjoy spring. Now, I know some of our listeners up are still having snow. I had a friend who posted they got 10.5 inches the other day in New Hampshire. But you know what? You can still go outside in that snow and enjoy nature, and I promise that spring is around the corner for everyone. All right, let's tell you about tonight's guest. Reverend Maria Kramer is dedicated to healing the world to peace through her mission to awaken peace and love in all she meets and to help others heal themselves by being a guiding light. Through her own journey of healing and awakening, she has come to know the simple truth that every single person is precious and divine, no matter how removed their behaviors are and life experiences may be from reflecting the truth. They have just forgotten who they are. She has come to know that we are not victims of our lives and that others are not in control of our lives. We are all truly incredibly powerful creators of all our experiences. We are, at each moment, presented the opportunity to make choices, and it is up to us to make the choices that are in alignment with the truth of who we are. Her wish is that we may all truly come to know in our heart of hearts the beautiful and awesome divine beings of love and peace that we are. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you.
So let's get started. I'm so excited. Forgiveness is such a great topic because it's the first day of spring, but I feel so many of us struggle with forgiveness. So what is different? What are you going to teach us tonight? What is radical about forgiveness?
Well, I feel that, and I think that there's so many different ways that we have been taught what forgiveness is all about. And I think over the years, a lot of forgiveness is very superficial. But when you really get to a deep level of forgiveness, what it does, it helps you look at the world through a different set of eyes.
So when you
I think that's where the radical forgiveness comes in.
So let's talk a little bit deeper on that. So when you're talking about superficial forgiveness, what do you mean? Kind of like, oh, I forgive you, and I just say it, but not truly feel it, not truly believe it. Is that what you're meaning?
Yeah. There, you can have forgiveness where it's part of your thoughts, and you say, yeah, I forgive that person, and yet within your heart there's a feeling of, yeah, talking behind your teeth. And so it's not really true forgiveness. True forgiveness is really where you get to a place where you completely forget.
Forget what happened.
Right. It's not that you forget what happened. Well, you do to a certain extent, but the charge on it goes away. And it's not that you're condoning the event or whatever happened. It's that you're separating the soul that participating in that dance with you to have that experience, and that you are forgiving the person. And that kind of releases you from being the charge and the attachment that you still have to that event. Because a lot of times when we're not willing to forgive, when we still have resentment and bitterness and anger towards something, we're not living in the present moment. We're still tied to that event, and it's draining our energy.
I remember I did, and someone said a really good point. I read the book on radical forgiveness, and at the end of the book, I was able to forgive the person that I most struggled with to forgive. And they reminded me, they said, but Julie, you've been doing a lot of work. And so I think they were right that kind of, however, I was able to hear in this message, which I'm hopeful that there are people out there listening tonight are going to hear you. It's going to be that aha moment for them. But when I read the book, I had forgiven the person. And so I kept asking myself, okay, have you forgiven him? Do you and kept wanting that reaction, that anger, that to come out, and it didn't. And I was like, wow. Yeah. I mean, to me, it was was amazing because I didn't think I would ever be able to forgive them.
Yeah.
But it lifted a burden.
It does, a huge burden. And you know when you've truly forgiven at the deepest levels, when you can look at that person and see them as the son of God or the child of the divine.
Absolutely.
And that's the test.
Why? Well, I think that's how you have to see it. Why do you think it is? Do you think it's part of our culture in America? Or I know that, you're familiar with other cultures. Mm-hmm. I feel like we don't. It's part of our culture not to forgive or to forgive on a superficial level. But there just seems to be this anger. What do you think about that?
I think there's a lot to what you're saying. And I think the piece of it that's holding that in place is victim consciousness. Because when I feel I'm a victim to any circumstance, I keep that energy alive. Because of this event and this person, my life is shitty now.
Right.
And so it keeps perpetuating and keeping it alive. And the key to forgiveness is really realizing that you co-created this event. So you are part responsible for creating it. And in taking that, not responsible for what they did, but for your dance and participating in whatever it was that you experienced that you need to forgive.
So let's talk a little bit more about that, because I think that that's so true. Because I would say that, definitely speaking for myself, but I think a lot of us see ourselves as victims. And to be able to step back, that's more from a higher, more spiritual perspective, to be like, I co-created this. So talk a little bit more about that. And later on in the show, I would love for you to talk about an example, the Newtown shootings. I think that's, my first reaction was definitely, oh my gosh, children. How can anyone harm a child? Mm-hmm. And then, when you learn that the child, he was almost a child himself. He was young. The shooter was only 20, was about to be committed to a mental institution. And he had all these other issues. I'm not condoning violence by any stretch of the imagination, but at least I'm able to feel for that child and be like, wow, I can understand how he reacted like that and how he thought his mother loved those children more. Again, not condoning it, but we'll talk about that a little later. But if you can talk a little bit more about the victim mentality and how we co-create situations like that. Because I think that's a big thing. That was part of the aha moment for me, that I'm creating my reality.
Right. And it's through and when we play victim, or when we are in that victim energy, there's a lot of blame and guilt going on. Every time we judge anything, there is shame, guilt, and blame. And so it's much easier to point fingers from an egoic perspective or human self perspective, that it's their fault, or that's whatever circumstance, it's that's fault that my life turned out the way it did. And so what happens, though, is when we believe we're a victim, we create more of that energy to flow into our life. And so we can't really get out of it. It's like a trap.
So can we use...
So it's about shifting it from taking that responsibility and say, how can I change it and look at it differently than I have been trained to look at it? It's not someone else that's doing something to me, and not constantly blaming others. And that's the hook. We have to stop blaming and taking responsibility and see, how did this unfold and how can I change it so it won't happen again to me or perhaps someone else.
Well, I'm going to use myself as an example. I use my life. My listeners know that. So I'm engaged to a wonderful man. He's amazing. But I had to do a lot of work on myself to attract that into my life. And I believe he did as well. And prior to that, I would always attract men that weren't the best for me, or maybe weren't able to commit to a relationship. And when I was able to stand back and say, oh, well, you've attracted this guy and here's why. Now, then I was able to fix it and to change it and to shift it. So can you maybe So before I saw myself as a victim and no longer see myself that way. So could you maybe give another example of a situation maybe that in your work you see a lot that people co-create but maybe don't necessarily see themselves as a victim?
Very much similar situations, especially, if you've been in an environment where there is, anytime we have a belief, when we have an experience, it creates a belief, sort of like in our brain computer software. And so it then, that's now a program that's running. I'm a victim. I can't attract the right person, or I live in lack. A lot of people live in lack. Or if you were abused as a child or were in some sort of threatening situation, you start running beliefs that life is not safe. The world is not safe. I can't be safe around men or women or whatever it might be. And so we perpetuate it. So it's about learning how to take a step back and see, how can I change it? And it's really by forgiving all those people that helped us feel like we were victims. And it's sort of, we come into this earth school, if you will, of if we're here to learn how to forgive and become empowered and really take our power back, then we need to have the other in duality. We live in duality here, so we have to have experiences of pain, of suffering, and having something to forgive. It's very easy to learn how to forgive if somebody didn't say good morning to you and you'll have a little tiffed off, or somebody cut you off in traffic and it really bugs you. But if you had an experience that was really traumatic, like abuse or whatever it might be, murder, or just, a lot of people are brought up in dysfunctional families. Now you have something to learn to really forgive at a very deep level.
Now, I want to remind everyone, we have a question for Chad. I'm going to ask you in a moment, Maria. If you have a question for Maria, feel free to chat it in. I'm happy to ask. You can call in at 919-518-9773 or Skype Computers 2K Voice. Grudge has a question for you. Eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. What's wrong with that? It's in the Bible, right? Do you not believe in the Bible?
I'm an interfaith minister, so I embrace all religions. I've studied them all, or a good part of them, and I do embrace the Bible as part of it. And I think that's part of the Old Testament, if I remember correctly. The part that I connect with is more of what Jesus' teachings was, which is love everyone unconditionally and forgive. And I actually used to believe in that when I grew up. Mm-hmm. And because of my background, and I grew up in a very abusive home. So my belief when I grew up was, if somebody hurt me, you eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. I truly believed in that when I also believed in the death penalty. But as I have walked on my path of forgiveness, then I realized that really doesn't solve the problem, because now you're just in that same energy of anger and you're going to keep throwing that tennis ball back and forth, and it's not going to help anything.
Let's talk a little. Go ahead. So I want you to finish your thought.
So where I feel the most profound lessons in the Bible or any of the scriptures through history, even the Course in Miracles, which is one of our newer writings, it's forgiveness. Everything we experience in life is an opportunity to forgive. Every single experience that we have. It's also to love your brother as yourself. And so that doesn't mean eye for an eye. That was the old way. The new way is loving others as yourself. So you have to learn to love yourself first. And that's not something that we are taught very much, but I think it's a very key point. And we can only do that when we really have a really clear connection to God. God is an unconditional loving God, whatever tradition you come from. It is absolutely pure light, pure consciousness, pure love. And we're made in the image of that energy. So it's for us to live as unconditionally loving beings. If we live in any other way, we're not living our truth.
Absolutely. I think amen to everything you've just said, especially about loving yourself. If we were we all truly loved ourselves, we'd live in a much different world.
You wouldn't hurt a fly.
Couple question. Luigi wants to know, is the Course in Miracles about Jesus?
Say that one again, please.
Luigi asks, is the Course in Miracles about Jesus?
It's a writing that was, I guess you can call channeled to a lady, I can't think of her name right now, and it is Jesus's energy and words that were written down in that book. So it's messages from his consciousness that was written in that book.
And then Grudge has a follow-up question and says, so do you believe are you saying the Old Testament is bad?
No, I'm not. What I'm saying is we have, life is constant change and constant evolvement, and the New Testament was written after the Old Testament. And so for me, we are here to live love and to be loving beings and to take those teachings that are most important and to apply those in our daily life.
Outstanding.
I think some of the greatest teachings are from Abraham and Moses and all in the Old Testament, and that was their stories of their personal relationship to God and listening to that inner voice, not hearing other people's opinions, but truly going within and knowing that whatever message they got straight from God, that was their truth.
I love that. But let's switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about, because a lot of times I don't think people think of the emotional, spiritual, or physical toll that not forgiving someone takes on them. So can you talk about that? And then as I was thinking about this question, I've read a lot of Louise Hay. I'm a fan of her book, You Can Heal Your Life. And you probably know, and I believe if I remember correctly, she believes that cancer is a cause of resentment. Mm-hmm. And so, and she has in her book, she details whatever your ailment is, what it's related to. But talk about what happens to us when we don't forgive.
Any energy, if any illness or out of alignment our body expresses is a result of anger, bitterness, and resentment. End of story. Because when we do that, we withhold love from ourselves. Every time we feel anger emotions or we hold them, not that anger is bad. Anger is a very powerful emotion, but it's about using it productively instead of destructively. And most of us hold anger towards a person or a situation in the past, and they're not feeling the anger where it's actually poisoning ourselves because we hold it within ourselves. They're out having a good time and you're suffering. And so the longer we hold these emotions, they literally settle into our bodies on a cellular level. And the body can only hold that so much. It's literally like somebody said, I read somewhere, do you go into yesterday's trash for today's nourishment?
Oh, I love that.
And that's literally what we do. We live in a garbage dump of negativity when we have anger, bitterness, and resentment, guilt, shame in our bodies. So the only way to the antidote, you can also look at it, it creates an acid environment in your body. So if we have acid, if anybody know their pH levels, in the body, just like temperature, you have to have a certain 98.6 to have a natural temperature. Your pH balance needs to be 7.3 and change. Just like food creates acidity in your body, the emotions create more stress and acidity and affects our body greater than anything we ever put into our bodies, food-wise. So it's how we feel in our body that responds to what our bodies are manifesting. And the only way to really clear out anger, bitterness that has been long withheld is forgiveness, because it's really about loving self. And there's really three ways that we need to forgive in, and this is really important. One is forgiving others, and believe it or not, that's the easy one. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No matter what it looks like and how bad it was. The next one is God. Many people have beef with God. And the third one is yourself, and that's the hardest one. Because often the thing that we can't forgive someone else for, the reason why we can't forgive them is because we have actually somewhere in our history, whether this lifetime or another lifetime, we have done something exactly like that, and that's what we can't forgive ourselves for, and so we can't offer it to others.
I'm going to have to stew on that for a little bit. That's a really, because others still struggling with that one. I was angry with God, but when I figured out, able to let go the anger at the main person, then God went away. And I'm going to bring up a question, but we have a great question from Jason here while I think about mine. He says, are there any radical ways to reduce anger? I am so very angry about people in my past.
Yes. You can do anger. You can do meditation. It's a great way to do it. There's a couple of ways you can do it. Write down on a list down all the wonderful people that you're still pissed off at or that brings anger up within you, and offer yourself, if you can, to forgiveness to them. If you can't do that, ask the divine to flow forgiveness through you to them. Be willing to be a vessel for the energy to begin to move through you, even if you can't do it yourself. That's a really important stepping point. The second thing is there's a wonderful meditation I learned from a spiritual teacher of mine called the anger meditation. And it's extraordinarily powerful. And it's literally you set a timer for 5 minutes, turn the music up on high, or go in your car, and you surround whoever you're angry with a beautiful pink bubble of light, and you ask no harm come to anyone, and you literally just start with, I'm so angry and pissed off at you because blah, 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 blah. And you start over and over and over again, and you go for 5 minutes. It's about getting the energy out of your body so it's not contaminating you anymore. If you do that for 30 days, there is no anger left, and you will start laughing at the end of it and go, that was silly. How did I get so sucked into the seriousness of this? This is not even important. So that's a really fun way to do it, and you won't even go 30 days. By 2 weeks, you're done. Another tool that I use, which is powerful, is the Ho'oponopono prayer, and I don't know if you've heard it, Julie, but it's from Hawaii, and it's a healing process that really says this. It's 4 sentences. I'm really sorry. Please forgive me. I forgive you. I love you. And I thank you. And what it really means is I'm so sorry for whatever in me created the need for you to express yourself the way you did at the time that whatever happened. I forgive you. I set you free. Please forgive me for holding a grudge for this long. I thank you, and I truly love you from a soul perspective. And that's, if you can run that constantly, that has served me really, really well, and many people have had miracles happen as a result of that one.
Oh, that's great. Now, Cindy H. made a comment that my biggest problem is to forgive myself. So do you have some thoughts or suggestions for her?
Yeah, that's a tough one. But when you can climb that one and walk through it, everything shifts. You can do the Ho'oponopono for that one also. And remember, forgiveness is not about the other person or who you were in the past. It's setting yourself free. Every time we have unforgiveness, it's literally as if there's a cord, an energy connection, like a light to a socket in a wall that ties you to that energy and that past event or whatever it is that you can't forgive yourself for. And the level of shame that we normally have for that is very deep. And so you can do the Ho'oponopono. You can just say, I choose in this moment to begin the possibility of forgiving myself for whatever it is that I haven't been able to this far. Okay. And ask the divine, ask God, ask the angels, or whatever you are connected with on a greater scale that's bigger than you to help and support you in it. The most important piece is your desire to move out of the pain and let the past go.
I think that's wonderful. And I want to remind everyone, if you have a question for Maria, feel free to chat it, and I'll be sure to ask, or you can call in at 919-518-9773 or Skype and Computers 2K Voice. And I have a question. I told you I had to forgive something. I'll eventually talk about it, but not yet. So I had to give someone who was very awful to me. And I was able to do that. I was all excited. I was like, woohoo! The hardest person to forgive, but there is someone I'm struggling with now who has just annoyed me at a much smaller scale. It's like a craw in my throat. And I'm kind of annoyed with myself. I'm like, why are you having such trouble forgiving this person? So have you ever experienced that or worked with someone has? Or what would you say about that I can forgive on this kind of bigger scale and this little thing's annoying me?
Well, sometimes it's just like anything else. The big rainfall or the big snowfall is not the problem. It's the one little drop that wears you daily, that wears the hole in the stone. We've heard that story before. So what I would suggest to you is look at what is it about it that's really bugging you, and what does that have to do with you?
Okay.
There's really only two reasons why we get angry and annoyed or frustrated with people. I'm not getting what I want is one thing, and the other one is I'm getting what I don't want. So you can look at, as that anger arises, what does it remind you of from the past? Who else in your past, typically mom or dad, does this remind you of that it's really triggering you? And it can be a voice, it can be an incantation, it could be a sound, it could be a smell, it could be, a mannerism, it could be many different things. So you can always look at, if something is really bugging you, notice who and what does this remind me of? Because typically the people that are annoying us now, it's not about them. They're actually triggering and something deeper coming up for healing.
Okay. I'll have to think about that one. I'm going to have to replay the interview. It's an ex-friend of my fiance's who didn't like me and was very public and very vocal about it and just didn't go about it in the right way. And I was angry about that, and I was angry about what he hurt my fiance and some other things in there, which I won't go into. But that's a really good point. I'm going to have to think, because nothing's popping up at the top of my head, but I think that's a really good point. You're reminding me that it's to heal something, that something needs healed.
Yeah. See, if we feel anger arise within us, and I always try to say, don't use, I am angry, because I am statements are really powerful. And so if we can learn how to shift whenever we feel any emotion to, I'm feeling anger arise, I'm feeling shame arise, I'm feeling love arise, because we need, if we can separate who we are from the feelings, that is really, really helpful. Because we are being of love, and that's what we are at our core. But as a human self or ego self, we have different, the part of us that feels the anger and feels disappointed or disrespected or dishonored, it's the ego. And that's because it lives from a fear-based space. It lives from fear. Your soul lives in a space of love, where everything is perfect creation as it is, without judgment. The only piece of it, us, that judges is where the ego runs it. And it's bad. It was given to us, but we have to learn how to manage it and not let it manage us.
I'm going to try your 30-day. I'm going to, again, just have to listen to this, because for me, it's physically exhausting.
Yes.
I don't want to do this. I want to be done with it. I can feel the physical toll. And but I also, like you mentioned at the top of the show, I don't want to artificially, like, technically I've forgiven him, but that's technical. I want to really forgive so I can move forward. It's about helping me.
Right. And you can also, notice there is a cord, there is a connection. Whenever we have this unfinished business with anyone, it's literally like we're hooked together with a chain. So another way to do it is say, I'm going to cut the cord now, just like when a baby is born. You cut the umbilical cord to become your own self. So you're not connected in oneness. You're becoming your own empowered self, not allowing that energy to drain anymore. You are your own source of energy and not allowing that other person or that event or whatever drain you. So another thing you could do is just cord cut and say, I want to disconnect from this, because forgiveness is about us. It's not about the other person. It's truly only about us, that we are now ready to not let that past event or whatever it is frustrate us anymore. We're taking our freedom back.
Absolutely. Now we've got a question here from Ace on chat who says, how can I change my negative thoughts about myself? I self-talk negatively and not positively.
Yeah. One thought at a time. Forgive yourself for getting stuck on a track. It's literally like we get on a merry-go-round with our negative self-talk and we begin to spiral down. And it's really hard to get off of this. The most important piece is you become aware of it. Most people are not aware that they're thinking and talking negatively to themselves. It becomes the background noise and it's the norm. Congratulate yourself. You are aware of it. That's a huge step in the right direction, because when we don't have awareness, we can't change it. Once we have awareness, we can begin to change it.
Absolutely.
And so one thing you can do is offer forgiveness to yourself for getting stuck and saying, I'm going to choose a new thought. This is a really good one. This one is one of my teachers helped me with as well. And this is a great little phrase. Whenever anger or negative self-talk comes up, use this little mantra. I choose peace instead of this. I was going through a really challenging time back, 2002, 2001, something like that. And I was studying the Course in Miracles at the time, and my teacher gave me this phrase to use. And I was really on a spiral down, and the energy was, and the anger and the frustration, the victim energy was up really big time. And he says, just use that every time that thought pops up. And I did, and within 4 days, I started to change my thoughts, and whatever it was that was bugging me just kind of dissolved. So just try this one. I choose peace instead of this I'm thinking or feeling.
All right, we've got a wonderful question here from Bill on chat. Please speak on what to do when one enjoys the hanging on to the unforgiveness.
Yes, it's good food for the ego. It loves it. It's like the energy vampires. And that's the hook, that you're actually getting a secondary benefit from it. So ask yourself, what is my secondary gain? And how important is it to me? What else could be more important to me than the benefit that I'm getting from holding on to this right now? Typically, holding on to it is because we rather focus on the other person's fault than ours. Whenever we point a finger at someone else, and the ego loves this, it would much rather point the finger at somebody else than look at the 3 fingers that point back at you. Whenever you point the finger at someone, there's always 3 pointing back at you. And so it's literally having that desire, and that comes little by little. And I want to change this now. And so just become aware that there's a secondary gain from it for me in holding on to this grudge, even if it causes pain in your body, either emotionally or mentally or physically. And there gets a point, and that's happened to me in 2009, where I said, enough is enough. And when you have reached the point of enough is enough, and you can scream it at the top of your lungs, it will change.
I love that. We've got another question from Bible Thumper, which this is great. We can talk about this. I mentioned it earlier. How can I forgive people like Hitler, that caused such horror? So let's talk about the Newtown school shootings because, the majority of our listeners are here in America. I think people's heart just broke that day because especially when it comes to children, I'll never forget, I don't know, this was years ago. I saw a woman on Oprah who was able to forgive a drunk driver that had killed her child. And I remember thinking at the time, I just couldn't even comprehend that. I was like, wow, how can she? I mean, I was just amazed by that. And I think maybe this can lead into questions about stages of forgiveness, because I wouldn't expect someone that lost their child and, in a horrific tragedy like that within a week to be like, oh, I see it from the spiritual perspective. So talk a little bit about the stages of forgiveness and when they're and forgiveness of a horrific event.
Well, there are many different levels of forgiveness, and I think that's really important to recognize. And so the first one is I forgive, or the first one is I can't forgive. I've had many clients that, I had one client, it took her 3 sessions to be able to just say the word forgiveness. It was literally fa-fa-fa. She couldn't get it out of her mouth. And so that was how stuck she was in blame and judgment. And little by little, because she wanted to get out of pain more than she wanted to hold on to this, again, it becomes a desire. Do I want peace in my life, or do I want to hold on to this pain? And so you begin with thinking, I think I can forgive them, or even though I can't forgive them, I'm okay. And then you go into, I can forgive them, but it's from the thought, maybe I can do it someday. And then the next level is I begin to see that this event, for example, the event that you just mentioned, has a spiritual purpose. It's never what we think it is from the little limited perspective that we see it through the ego's eyes. The true perspective is always when we can see it from soul. If you look at it from ego and from humans, it's like we're in the valley. We can only see what we see. But on the soul level, on a spiritual level, you are literally up on the top of the mountain and you have the whole view. So there's every crisis, every negative event, if you want to call it negative, there's a spiritual purpose. And it's to recognize that everything that happened in such a crisis like that is to raise our awareness of what was the purpose of this, and maybe it was to learn how to forgive, and maybe to raise consciousness and awareness that there's so much pain and suffering in the world, and why is that? And that's because we perpetuate the blame game. If we can stop that, it will shift everything.
Maria, can you hang up and call us in again? We're having a bit of technical difficulty. And
sure.
While you do that, I just want to remind everyone, if you have a question for Maria, you can chat it. I'm happy to ask it, or call in at 919-518-9773 or Skype at Computers 2K Voice. And we'll see if our connection, we've got Maria getting her back on. And I think it's a great topic, again, for the first day of spring to talk about forgiveness, because I think it's something that's so important. Okay, much better connection. So please go ahead with the stages of forgiveness as we talk about and big challenges such as horrific events where we're all challenged to forgive.
Where did you lose me completely, or do you need to replay, or just?
No, you were just a little squiggly, so you can pick up from where you were.
Okay, great. So when we really are able to look at every crisis as a gift in forgiveness to raise consciousness, because whenever there is a major crisis like that, it's really to show there's something is wrong. And it's really our perception of life. And to become more loving, giving people instead of living from ego in it's your fault, it's their fault, it's my fault, whatever it might be.
How does
And
our
when you have a situation like the kids, or when there is a murder, know that the person who commits the crime, it's really to show the great level of pain they're in, and how lack of love there has been in their life. For some, it's, they start drugging themselves and start abusing themselves and hurting themselves. And to the degree that you have these horrific events, it's really to show consciousness. We need to make a change here. The program, whatever we're doing, it's not working.
I once read a quote that depression was anger turned inwards, which I thought,
Yes.
when I heard that, I was like, wow, that's really insightful. And so it's interesting that when you're talking about someone who commits a crime, I never looked at it that way, that that's their way of saying I'm in pain, because then you just mentioned, or we turn it inward with drug abuse or whatever that is,
Right.
our drug of choice is. What would you say to someone who, you talked about your client earlier who took 3 sessions just to get out the word forgive? And I can absolutely understand and respect that. So if someone listening is like really in that early stages of forgiveness, what would you say to them, or what advice, what could be that itty bitty first step that they could take to get on the road to forgiveness?
Well, the first thought that comes to mind is there's 2 pieces, and this is actually ties into what we were just talking about before, in that, in the Course in Miracles, I learned this, and I literally had it pasted on my forehead for years. All attack is a cry for help, and bar none. So it doesn't matter what the event is, that's what it is.
Do you recommend any writing or journaling? Do you think that that's beneficial for people who are working on forgiveness?
Yes. And to really start the process is to, if you can forgive yourself, just begin to say the words, even if you don't mean it. It's really huge. I forgive myself, or I open myself to begin to process of forgiving, even though it's really challenging. Write that on a piece of paper. You could write on a piece of paper, in this moment, I trust myself. That's a huge one, because when we are in unforgiveness mode, we are not in a trusting place. We're in a very big distrusting place, because many people feel, if I forgive, this is a hook that a lot of people think. If I forgive this person or this situation, my fear is that I'm going to invite somebody else to do the same again. And so the secondary gain is, if I'm holding on to this unforgiveness, then it's almost as if I'm building a wall and I won't let anybody in. And it's that energy of, I don't really want to get hurt again. But it's really in my, what is the phrase? It's in my vulnerability, my strength lies. We've heard that before. It's not in my protectiveness, but most of us try to protect ourselves, but that's only because it's a false protection. There's really nothing to protect, because nobody can hurt us. It's through how we react to things. If we feel hurt, that creates what we feel. Nobody does it to us. It's how we react to a situation. So the first thing would just start to begin to write down. Journaling is great. I do that. I've done it for 20 years, and I still do to this day. And really, what are my feelings? Getting your feelings out on paper. You could also write down a letter to the person or the situation that you're having a hard time with. Just write it down, and then maybe burn the letter in a little fire ceremony and let it go.
I've done that before. I find that very helpful. We've got another question here from Bill on chat, and I want to remind everyone, chat a question, and Maria, I know, is happy to answer it, or you can call in at 919-518-9773 or Skype computers, 2K voice. Bill asks, how does one trust that letting go of anger and forgiveness, okay, let me rephrase that. How does one trust letting go of anger and that everything will be okay?
It's in the beginning, you really can't. You just have to have the desire. I think for me, I was really blessed on my journey to have people been put in my path that I've learned from who had worse experiences than me and forgave to such a level that they saw their perpetrator as their greatest teacher of learning how to love unconditionally. And so that was the gift they brought to me. And so I wanted to get out of pain so bad that I asked them, well, what do you do? You know, how did you get to this point? And I said, I want to do what you do so I can feel the same lightness in my being that you are. Because I want to be able to see the world through the eyes that you're seeing. I want to see the world through Jesus' eyes, through Buddha eyes, through Kuan Yin eyes, or Lao Tzu eyes. I want to see the world as this beautiful place. And so I would encourage you to connect with people who have already walked the path that you're walking and ask, how did you do this? And meditation is probably the most profound way to start, because the more we can silence our mind and ask for inner guidance from the divine, and how do I do this? Show me the way. You will get the answers. They're already within you. You don't have to find it outside of you. If you can go into silence and ask God or Jesus or whatever you connect to, the angels, show me how to move out of this blockedness that I'm feeling so I can feel peace again. And then little by little, you're going to start to get the information, and you will be guided exactly how to do it. All you need is desire.
I think that's key. You know, I've often talked on this show how a lot of times in our healing journey or our forgiveness journey, we think, oh, you know, I can't go through that. It's going to be too painful. But when we're on the other side, we're like, oh my gosh, why did I hold on to that for so long? I'm in physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually in such a better place. Yeah. And it wasn't, my holding on to it was way worse than anything I had to walk through.
Right. Think of anger and bitterness and resentment. Think of unforgiveness as a hot coal or a hot potato that you're walking around on, and it's literally burning a hole inside your stomach or wherever in your body. Just let it go.
Can you talk of either your own personal journey or, you know, what happened with the woman that for 3 sessions couldn't even get out the word forgive? Was she able to move past that and forgive and change her life?
Oh, she's doing great. And it was her continued desire to keep moving forward no matter how challenging it was. You know, and I think that's even what it has been for me. You know, growing up in an abusive home, both sexually, emotionally, mentally, physically, you know, you go through life and it sets you up in a belief system that really holds you in a very limited space. And eventually, you know, you can hide it and pack it away in a box. But eventually, you know, you get old enough and you have a midlife crisis or in your 30s or whatever. And it's like soul is asking you to look at it now and really address it and work with it. And because every time we hold that energy of unforgiveness and that anger, you're the one that's suffering. You know, I went through several years, I wanted to commit suicide. It was so bad. I just wanted to check out of here. I said, this is not what life is meant to be. And so, but my desire to really find a way, why did I have to have these experiences? What's the purpose? And it was to forgive. And how better to forgive than if we have some really intense experiences? If it's just little stuff, we're not going to learn that lesson really well. But we need to have something really huge in our face to stretch. Look at our life here on earth as your spiritual mastery dream. That is what you're here for. The only thing we're here to learn is to love unconditionally. Everything else is secondary. That is the only purpose your soul has here. And so to learn to love unconditionally, it's, we're going to have to learn how to forgive. Otherwise, we're not going to do that.
We have
you can't forgive and you cannot love unconditionally and be in unforgiveness at the same time. You can't be angry and loving at the same time. It's conflicting emotions.
Bill has a great follow-up point. He said, so forgiveness is a decision.
Yes, absolutely. And it was funny because I was meditating on this morning and trying to get ready for the show. And it's funny with the lady that brought up the Bible before. And the thing that popped in my head was in the Lord's Prayer. It just kept going in my face is, forgive us our trespasses as keywords, we forgive those who trespass against us. So we have to do the forgiveness first before we are being blessed with the grace of the forgiveness of the divine.
Do you feel that, are you still challenged to forgive people?
No, it's easy.
Wow.
It gets easier and easier and easier. And you literally get to a point where you look at life as, what can you do but look at life as a play? And we're just playing different roles. And look at that. Oh, they're playing angry. Oh, look at that. I'm playing victim. And it's just, you look at it as this is just a play. It's literally like you're going to the movies and watching a movie. You're not attached to it at all. Mm-hmm. And everything that happens is just, you're witnessing it. You're not in it. It's almost as if you're playing two roles at the same time. You're both the audience, but you're also on stage, but you're not so in that role. It's just a role. It's not real.
Right. Oh, I think that's fantastic. I would love to be that spiritually evolved. Not there yet. I'm a work in progress, I like to say. So we're working on it. But
and there's stuff that comes up, but it's more my own stuff now. Whatever I still haven't forgiven myself for little things, but others I can. It gets easier and easier the more you choose to. Just like going to the gym. Mm-hmm. The first time you go lift those weights, they're really heavy, and you start with the 10-pounders, and next thing you know, you can lift 100 pounds, and you go, wow, that's easy.
That's true, but I also think you brought up a really wonderful point earlier that it allows us to clear things, and if we experience that, then, it's a blessing, almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's where a lot of the work is really all that stuff we haven't forgiven ourselves for. And once we really do a lot of that clearing, then there's no more programs that are running so that when people come into your sphere of influence that are behaving a certain way that normally would trigger you, they don't trigger you anymore because it's all cleared up.
I know. I want to get to that point. Trust me. Very much so. Quickly rather than non-quickly, but it's all good.
And you can.
Now, Amnon has a question.
Let's go back to you were talking about the trespassing, and I belong to the crowd that grew up with the Old Testament. Okay, when do you say forgive and forget? I mean, if you keep forgiving and they come back again and trespass, and you forgive and they come back and when do you stop? Come on, okay, I forgive. Get away. I don't want to have anything to do with that person anymore. Just by saying that, it's like you didn't forget them. So it's kind of a conflict. But you can't just keep on forgiving and forgiving, and people will come back to do whatever they're doing to get you angry or mad at them or whatever.
Very good question. Thank you for that. And that's very great insight. So turn the other cheek.
Okay, so wait a second.
I'm being facetious here.
So it's okay. So you turn the other. No, so you turn the other cheek, right. And they slap that too. Now what do you do?
Well, it's if they're still coming in your face,
right,
into your experience and challenging you, we haven't learned the lesson yet. It's that simple.
So what do you do as that
So
person?
what I would do is I would go in and say, okay, why is this person, why am I being triggered by this person? What is it that they're doing and why do they keep showing up? What is it I need to learn that I haven't learned yet? What is it I haven't forgiven myself for? What is it in their behavior or whatever it is that they do that I don't like within myself? And it may not be something that you have thought of before. It may be very unconscious or very deep in the subconscious.
So you learn that, and at that point, what do?
You forgive yourself.
And
then you forgive them. And once that belief, and it also has to do with beliefs. So if you believe that this type of person always shows up, you also need to change your belief that I'm surrounded with beautiful, loving people. Okay. So there's like two different pieces to it. But when you can see that person and realizing that they're in their ego, they're not acting from soul, then it becomes much easier to forgive them because they're unconscious.
Okay.
When we live from a place of judgment and people are triggering us or talking down to us, or they are beating us up physically or verbally or mentally or emotionally, they're unconscious. They're not living in a conscious state of being. None of us are.
Bill asked a question as Amnon was asking.
Did that help?
Oh, absolutely. No, that it makes sense, but it's easier said than done, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely, no doubt about it.
Bill had a follow-up as Amnon was talking. He said, isn't that establishing boundaries?
There's absolutely, boundaries are very important. However, we can have boundaries from a fear place, and we can have boundaries from a love place. And as long as they come from fear, we recreate. When we change them and they come from a place of love and saying, that behavior is not acceptable to me anymore, but not from a place of, if you don't stop this, blah, 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 blah. It's two different ways of expressing it. And really it's also about you learning to stand in your truth and not worry about what other people think about what choices you make. Often we will sacrifice who we are to gain love from another. And so that's another piece of why people keep showing up that are abusive to us. Because there's a piece of us that are not willing to say, I don't need you. I can walk out of here and if I never see you again, I'm okay. Not from a place of anger, but from a place of I am complete with this experience.
I love that. Now, there are questions that you've been on the show before. So the first one is, someone might be struggling right now, and maybe their son was murdered or they're going through a really tough time. What advice do you have for them?
Be gentle and loving to yourself. And really find a way to go within. Connect if you can with whatever, the person that you lost. If it was a murder or somebody that you lost, that's no longer here in body. We can communicate spirit to spirit. And often if we're able to open ourselves to that, there's a gift and a message that we can receive from it. Know that nothing happens in God's world that doesn't have a purpose. I think if we can embrace that no matter what it is, no matter how painful it is, there's a purpose to the experience that we're going through. And it's just a matter of us being able to open to whatever that is and allow the time for healing to take place in the time that we need. There's not a right time. There's not a wrong time. Everybody's process is unique to them. And stop judging yourself and stop comparing yourself to others. And in that, when we forgive, we stop judging. And that's the biggest piece with forgiveness and living in a constant state of forgiveness. It's releasing the energy of judgment. Every time we judge, we go into separation of me and another person and not realizing we are really one. And so that's where forgiveness is so powerful, when we realize I'm no different than my brother or sister who did X, Y, Z, because I could do the same thing. And so when I no longer can judge me, I also get into that space where I can't judge another person. And so hence forgiveness becomes easy.
Now, you know, I'm all about getting off the couch. And I do this show because I want people to change their lives and be amazing like they're meant to be. So what one step can people do right after the show, tonight before bed, or first thing in the morning to reawaken their brilliance?
See an image of yourself and someone else in front of you that you really don't, that you've had a hard time forgiving, and offer the Ho'oponopono prayer, or say, I'm choosing to forgive you in this moment, even though it's really difficult. But making choices every day, make a choice to do something different than you haven't done before. When we use the word choice, I can't, or I have to, if you just start using the word I choose to, it will shift everything in your consciousness.
All right, that's fantastic. Now tell us if you have any upcoming classes, about your book, your website, so people can learn more about you.
Yeah, my website is awakenpeaceandlove.com. And I actually have a book that I wrote years ago. It's called Prayers to Awaken Peace and Love. And it was really about prayers that came through and helped me walk through this pain. That might be very helpful to people. It's on my website. I just co-authored another book with 13 other people, and it's called The Chakra Journey, which is transformational stories. And a lot of my stories of my journey is in there on many different levels. And it's really a courageous book of all who've participated to really help others move out of fear and into love. I have a lot of IET classes coming up, integrated energy therapy classes, and they take place in Long Island. I'm traveling to Denmark to teach in June. And I also have teleclasses, Empowered Heart Living teleclasses coming up in April and May that actually covers a lot of what we talk about tonight.
And we also, Maria, I just remembered, was here last February. So if you want to learn more about IET and are interested and say, hey, what's that about, and interested in a class, you can look on our archives in February of 2012, and you can see a full interview just on IET. Well, thank you, Maria. It was a pleasure. I have to watch this about 1,000 times because I had several aha moments, but I couldn't go there because I had to pay attention and interview you. So I'm sure that I am grateful because I have some more work to do, and you gave a lot of great suggestions.
Thank you. I have one thing. Can I share one more thing?
Absolutely.
And I just thought of it now. It's on my website. One message that came through from Jesus to me years ago was this: forgiveness is the eye of the needle we must thread to achieve peace.
That's excellent food for thought.
So I just wanted to complete with that.
No, absolutely. And so we have your website down if you want to learn more about Maria, awakenpeaceandlove.com. And I want to remind our viewers, next month is our first online body, mind, and spirit workshop. It's going to be about attracting and finding love. If you scroll down and see, we have our little ad there. You click right to the link. You've got a special code that gets you $5 off, and the early bird special ends this Sunday. So if you've been looking for love in all the wrong places, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I listened to the panel last year and I'm happily engaged. So if you're looking for that special someone, need to love yourself more, the great expert panel, Body, Mind, Spirit Workshop. I hope to see you there. All right, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye now.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Sundays 9 a.m. till noon. Carrie's Psychic Cafe with Carrie Silkowski, Sundays 8 till 9 p.m. Health In with Debbie Bruck, Mondays 11 a.m. till noon. Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Mondays 8 till 9 p.m. One Chic Mama with Mary Michelle, Wednesdays 4 till 5 p.m. Reawaken Your Brilliance with Julie Seibert, Wednesdays 9 till 10 p.m. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by ThatVidBlasterGuy.com, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.